I look at SGA and what he did against the Pistons. No J-Dub, no Chet. He scores 48 points against the first-ranked defense since February 1st. I feel like that all but solidified his MVP case, and I've been trying to avoid this conversation all year long because I have a lot of respect for the all-time great guards. But where this season ranks amongst all-time great guards in the seasons that I've seen, the only guard that I think has had a better season than SGA this year, when you take into account the winning and both sides of the ball, have been Steph Curry. 2016 unanimous season Steph Curry. SGA, he is the one of the few players that's averaged 33 points per game or more that has been this efficient from the field. He's number one in EFG amongst players that have averaged 33 points or more. He's second in true shooting percentage. And when you look at his splits, 53% from the field, 38% from three, 90% from the free throw line. You look at Steph Curry, his unanimous MVP season, 50% from the field, 45% from three, which was nuts, 91% from the free throw line. Like 30, SGA is at 33-6. Curry that year was at 30-7. True shooting percentage, SGA is at 64.8%. Steph is at 66.9%. It is pretty close. And against top 10 teams with a top 10 record this year, SGA is averaging the most points. He's averaging 35 points per game. He's played the best against the best competition. And I've mentioned these on and off numbers before, but they've gotten even more ridiculous. SGA on the court without J-Dub or Chet, they have a 131 offensive rating. That's 100th percentile. There's no offense better. 106.7 defensive rating. That's 96 percentile. And they have a plus 25.2 point differential, which is 100 percentile. And this is in over 1,500 possessions. SGA has been able to carry these lineups that don't feature two of his best teammates at this efficient of a level, having this elite offensive output and defense. And I think that two-way ability is why I'd have this season over 2018 and 2019 James Harden, where I think with Steph Curry, it's right on par. And I don't think really it's a debate between MVP. I think it's pretty clearly it's SGA, and he's having an all-time season. And I think this season is his.
I have a couple of questions. And Riv, I'll happily concede to you after my questions. One, is this season as or more impressive as last year's Luka Doncic? And then two, if the conversation is strictly point guards, then a lot of the notes that I did for this are useless because I read it as best guard seasons. Because again, especially with his game, he's not the most prolific passer, not the most prolific playmaker on that side. But again, he's so elite scoring the basketball. Of course, I immediately go to 88 Jordan, where he did average 35, 6 and 6, 60% true shooting. He was DPOY that year as well. That's just, in my opinion, I think the best season by a guard, period, both point guard and shooting guard. But the efficiency from SGA with how great of a defender that he is. And of course, the team defense as a whole being great, that doesn't take away from how great he is on that side of the ball as well. But last year's Luka Doncic, for the shoulder that he had to, or the responsibility that he had to shoulder, how efficient he was as a scorer, how great he was getting downhill, how efficient he was as a three-point shooter. I think that also you take into account the elite level playmaking as well. I don't know. That's where I feel like he does have a seat at this table in this conversation. But for how dominant the team has been, how important he means and what he means to the offense as a whole, as opposed to being on and off the court as well, that he definitely has a seat with the all-time greats. There's no way around it. But again, I'd be remiss if we can't forget that you and I, Joel, we had Luka as our MVP. I thought he was the best player last season.
I think SGA's season is better than Luka last year.
I can hear it. It's fair. I mean, the numbers don't lie, and you watch him, and it's just hitting some of the toughest shots. I'm sorry, Riv. Go ahead.
No, you're good. It's a good conversation. I think SGA is the MVP. Me and John was just talking about this. Funny enough, like literally a couple of hours ago.
Objectively biased.
Yes, on Objectively Biased.
The Objectively Biased podcast.
Yes.
Featuring Wilder Adams, John Tortorelli, and River Brown.
Shout out to James Wilder for sure.
James.
Yeah, we were just talking about this. I think SGA definitely has a case. We did it. I think we just talked about it like post 2000. Like we didn't go back into the 90s, in the 80s, because it's such a different game, and you have to factor in so much, and it's just nobody feel like doing all that shit. So like we just talk post 2000. Listen, before this season, there was really nobody sitting at the table with Steph in terms of just guard regular season MVP. Like when you win a unanimous MVP, when you're sitting out like 15 fourth quarters, when you're dropping 40 in the span of 3 quarters, when you're having 20-point third quarters, like when you're doing the shit Steph was doing in 2016, it really was a magical year, and why he won unanimous. He was at a table by himself. SGA is on that historic pace where he's having one of the best guard seasons, of course, we've ever seen in terms of just, surpassing Kobe in his 06 season, I believe it was, surpassing D-Wade in his 09 season, which was another historic season, surpassing James Harden in his 18-19 season. Like, there's been some great guard seasons that we've seen, some historic ones. Even last year, Luka didn't win MVP, but his MVP season was fucking amazing. I think SGA is just – it's going to be a better case because he's going to beat out a guy who's having one of the best offensive seasons in NBA history in the Joker. Like the Joker, we can't I don't want to put him down and saying because the Joker's having one of the greatest offensive seasons we've ever seen. But SGA is also having one of the greatest scoring seasons we've ever seen.
Two-way seasons.
Yeah,
he's top 5 in steals this year.
Yeah, it's been a different year. But like you mentioned, Drew, if we want to go all the way back, you look at 88 and Michael Jordan, he damn near won every award that year while putting up 35, 7, and 7. And then he had a couple years in the 90s where he was pretty great. But just sticking to this year, SGA, it's him or Steph, man. And I'll put Steph. I still think Steph has the best guard season that we've seen in our lifetime. But SGA is 2 for me. The shit I'm seeing, granted, watching that Detroit game with some funny shit going on the other side. I'm not gonna say some funny shit, a lot of funny shit going on.
You heard what Mark Daigneault said about that?
A lot of funny shit that they was letting OKC do, and then the refs was doing some funny stuff. But as just talking about SGA and his shot making, it's crazy. It's really one-on-one. The shit he does under the 3-point line, fuck the 3-point percentage. I don't even care about that. The shit he does inside, in the paint, in the mid-range, you think the mid-range is the most inefficient shot because it is, but the shit SGA does, it makes it feel like it's probably the most efficient shot on the floor. It's so clean. But yeah, SGA MVP. For me, second best guard season I've seen if he continues on this trend, because that 48 against Detroit was definitely needed because the game got close at the end. But yeah, SGA, dog.
I couldn't help but feel bad for the Pistons players last night because the shit that Shai was doing to them, it made them look helpless. The shot that he hit on Simeon Fontecchio, the 3-point look, and the amount of tough, tested challenges in mid-range that he made kind of look so easy. For it to be a top 10 defense with a Sword Thompson guarding you and this quality, rugged, tough group, and for him to so efficiently, so effortlessly drop 48 points on that level of efficiency, it kind of felt like that moment where we all realized this is, of course, as you guys highlighted before, a historic season. It's like, okay, you got the MVP because you've highlighted very well. And you look at these historic guard seasons, the efficiency of which Shai is doing this 64% true shooting, 33 points per game. It's unheralded. And it's really only up there with the likes of Harden, Steph, D-Wade in 09, Michael Jordan. And on top of all of that, he does it without his second and third best players next to him. So it's kind of like a microcosm the entire season where it feels like Shai can do this even if you're missing half the starting lineup. And if you had them alongside him, nothing's really going to change. So last night, it was insane. I know it's a different situation, a different circumstance, but it kind of felt like that moment in 2018, 2019 where the Jazz are playing James Harden and Ricky Rubio is defending James Harden from behind him, trying to force him right. It's like that level of helplessness on the opposing defense. And I mean, you can't really help but just being on, kind of enjoy watching him play.
Guess the starting lineup last night.
Wasn't it? It was SGA. It was Kaysen.
I Heart.
Yes.
Dort started.
Yes.
Wiggins?
And
No.
did Wiggs start last night?
No.
He didn't even play.
Caruso?
Nope. He came off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the fifth starter?
It was Kenrich Williams,
Oh, he's solid.
Facts.
Hey,
I
Hustle.
forgot about that.
who played 31 minutes as well.
Kenrich's
So
cool.
he played a
He
lot
cool.
of minutes.
Kenrich's cool. He cool.
Cameron's is cool. It's just his hair is not. But he is a good basketball player.
But that's the
Might be the
starting
best
lineup that
man in basketball.
that's the starting lineup that SJ did it with. Like, yeah, the good players, but I mean, he dropped 48, and without just supporting cast, and you look at the other like MVP person that's in the conversation with Jokic, like you lose to the Wizards with like Jamal Murray having a great game, and everyone in the starting lineup pretty much like scoring 20.
I won't disagree that he didn't have his guys. That lineup, not terrible.
It's not
It's a
great.
lineup. But he's still missing.
Yeah,
Keyshawn.
if any other player, like if that's like a top end player, they have the star lineup for the entire season. You're like, get him out.
I mean, for the entire season, I agree. But for one night, you're telling me, oh, well, Kaysen, you got to go out there. You still have Isaiah Hartenstein. Lou Dort, you're still one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Oh,
He left
Kenrich
the
Williams.
game.
Jason played well.
Dort's left the game, I think.
But
like
it just
third.
showed like even with that, like that lineup is good, right? But it doesn't offer like the most spacing available. And I
I
think
don't
that with
disagree.
SGA, people talk about, oh, but he's in a 5-out system. He's all this, he's all that.
That's true.
He could get it like in any different way. He could do it what he does.
Kenny.
And you mentioned Luka, and I feel like the difference between last year and this year, I think, is that the Mavericks went on a run after the trade deadline, and once they got healthy, once Kyrie got healthy, they started going on a run. Chet has been out virtually the entire season, and OKC has still been number one. That's the big difference to me. Like this is, I would say, the second best guard season. I think it is like right up there with 2016 Steph. If there wasn't somebody opposite of SGA having an all-time offensive season, I think he would be unanimous MVP right now.
Yeah, it's definitely tier one of guard seasons we've seen, right? I think Steph is up there. If you're just talking like post 2000s, right? But I feel like a lot of the other arguments SGA either has efficiency over, if you're looking at like Kobe's best year, or just like pure dominance from the team. Like if you're looking at someone like James Harden, for example, right? Where the Thunder are like 10, 13 games, right? At this point in the Western Conference above the second seed. And I know we've talked about this all the time. And when we first had this debate, I don't know, month and a half ago, I was like 70% confident, like, yeah, this is SGA's MVP. I could hear out Jokic.
Mhm.
Now it's like 99-1, right? Like Jokic's having a great season. I get that. But what SGA is doing night in and night out, I don't know how there's any reasonable argument for Jokic over him, especially what you've seen post All-Star break from the Denver Nuggets, right? Like when you get blown out by the Lakers, the first matchup, and then you almost lose to them with nobody, then you lose to the Wizards. And I'm not just trying to refine it to like just the bad moments the Nuggets had, because of course they've had great wins, and of course Jokic has looked dominant. Even that Wizards game, right? Jokic wasn't the reason they lost. Like sure, Sarr put up 34, took like 30 shots as well, right? Like he didn't have the most efficient game. But what SGA is doing right now, it's just crazy, because I do think we sometimes overlook or underlook the Nuggets team. It's good. Don't get me wrong. This is a really good team. But a lot of it, especially with the injuries they've dealt with, is just high-level role players. Like you mentioned, Joel, Chet's been out for damn near the whole season. Hartenstein missed the first couple months of the year. And we just had a debate on the last show that J-Dub has been underwhelming, and he hasn't been up to the standard. So you're looking around, you're like, holy shit, who's actually been here? Like, who's actually out here every single night with SGA? And it's like, oh, is it a underwhelming according to Riv, J-Dub? And it's like, oh, it's Caruso who's missed some time, and Kaysen Wallace, and go down the list, Lou Dortz of the world. But there's not like he has this overwhelming amount of talent like the Boston Celtics, where you just have 5 guys that on any given year could be an all-star, or damn near 4 of them could be an all-NBA player, or the KD Warriors, or the big 3 Miami Heat. Like this Thunder team is not like that at all. Like this Thunder team is far from that. It's just a collective group of really good players who all defend their ass off. Almost all of them can shoot, even though they're not like the top of the league in terms of 3-point attempts, but they can all shoot and hit shots at a pretty decent clip. But with all the injuries they've dealt with, and to be as dominant as they are in the Western Conference, which we were walking into being like, this West could be multiple teams can do it, right? Like the Thunder can win it, the Nuggets can win it, the Lakers can win it. We love the Suns coming in to the season. So the fact that they have ran away with this basically from day one, like there really hasn't been a time throughout this season where we didn't think the Thunder were going to win the Western Conference and win it with like a month left of the season. So SJ is the clear MVP to me. In terms of guard seasons all time, he's right up there with Steph. What he's doing is really just, it's insane. The efficiency is doing it. The dominance is doing it. Everything he's had to overcome from his team. It's been amazing to watch.
I think Steph still has it just because like he did what he did without playing in the fourth quarter for virtually the entire season, and they won 73 games. But SJ is just right up there. I think we kind of like forget that SJ has been averaging 30 for the last 3 years. And this feels like the cherry on top of like just how much work he's put in. He joins Michael Jordan as the only player in 3 straight seasons to record 40 or more 30-point games. Only him and Michael Jordan have done that. When we talk about SGA and all these numbers that come up, like that is the constant comparison. It's like him and Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan. And I just feel like that's where we're at when we talk about all-time great seasons with him.
Yeah, he's playing great defense too. Like that's not someone you could pick on. You mentioned he's leading the league in steals. He defends every single night. He's not taking possessions off. Yeah, he's been great.
So OKC, they're number 1 seed in the Western Conference. We might have some varying answers here, some different answers here. Who is the biggest threat to OKC in the West?
Is it varying answers because you're going to say the Minnesota Timberwolves?
You wouldn't be alone.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that. They play OKC tough. That's a very tough matchup. Jalen Clark getting minutes. John, what's your answer?
My answer, it's funny. We were talking about this before, and I was between two
Where were
teams.
you talking about it before?
Here we go again, Drew. We were talking about the Warriors and
no way was I objectively biased.
Might have been.
Holy shit. Shout out to
and the team that I'm going to go with is Golden State because they have that collection of young wings. Specifically, I think that you start Moses Moody and then you have Jonathan Kuminga switch on to Shai. But the thing that kind of gives me the most optimism and the Warriors being the best matchup for Oklahoma City is that you have Jimmy, Dre, and Steph who have so much chemistry experience and just awareness of how to play in that playoff crucible. Whereas Oklahoma City, you have to see what their lineup's going to be health-wise. They're still a younger team. And Golden State having that championship experience and that young collection of guys that I'm not the highest on, but I do believe that Moody and Kuminga could hang fairly well in that matchup. And then after that, I just believe that Steph Curry be, in that particular series, the best player to go back and forth with Shai. And then lastly, to me, I look at the Warriors right now as a clear contender. You can have them as high as the second best team in the Western Conference. The Jimmy Butler trade completely reignited this team and got them back onto that contending track where everything just makes sense on the offensive end, and that level of balance on both ends of the floor, it gives them a chance against anybody. So I believe that Golden State would have to be the best option, and Minnesota would be number 2 for me.
Only thing I have to combat that is let me start by saying that this is solely matchup dependent because you look at the Warriors, some people have them as the second best team or the second most competitive team in the Western Conference. But I look at that series versus the Lakers. If the Warriors and the Lakers were to match up, I think that really plays into the hands of the Los Angeles Lakers. You guys aren't this overwhelming interior presence, and the Los Angeles Lakers aren't this team with overwhelming size. Although we have been playing relatively amazing defense in the paint, we aren't this team that's going to kill you with size. I think that we match up very well against the Golden State Warriors. But when it comes to Oklahoma City, this is a team that's going to kill you with size, and it's going to be one of the best defenses, and it's going to get out and it's going to run. SGA is an unstoppable force, and I think that regardless of whatever team that he goes up against, he's going to have his way. He's not going to really feel the presence unless Jalen Clark, who knows, right? Like that's the joke, the running joke on Jalen Clark being the SGA stopper. I don't see it. I think SGA, regardless, he's going to go out there and he's going to get his. It's the only team that I can give acknowledgement to as being the only team that could stop them. If I were to pick one, would be the Los Angeles Lakers. But other than that, it's themselves. Oklahoma City is an amazing team. They're very well-rounded. They have a perfect defense. They have a perfect player in SGA. It's just a matter of health and themselves. Are they going to be able to hit shots when it matters most?